Do is get started by cleaning up our foot rig, and then we'll work on the foot roll to finish up this lesson. Now, speaking of the foot roll, we have a few choices. We could either convert our foot locators to controls and allow animators to animate the foot that way. That's something I prefer to do at times because that gives you more control over the foot. You can pose it however you'd like. Now, another option is to create a custom channel that animators can use to animate the foot roll faster. So they can simply create a transition between the toe roll and the heel roll using this one property. And that's what we'll have a look at because we already know how to create controls. We know how to convert each of these to control objects. So let's go ahead and take the custom channel route. It's really neat stuff. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll grab our leg control. Let's go ahead and change its color. So we'll add our draw options. We'll zero out R and G. Sweet. So once it has been recolored, let's go to groups. We'll search for our controls group. Let's control click it, right click and choose add items. Nice. Now let's go ahead and deselect the group. We'll go to properties just so we can highlight the channels we'll eventually want to lock. So let's go ahead and highlight our scale channels. We'll search for our channel lock group. Let's control click it, right click, and we'll choose add channels. Nice. So next, we'll go through and grab all of our foot roll locators. So we'll grab all four and we'll store them in the hidden group. So let's control click the channel lock group to deselect it. We'll now grab the hidden group, right click and choose add items. It's now time to set up the foot roll. Let's go ahead and select our leg control. It makes sense to add the custom channel here simply because this is what we would use to animate the entire leg. So with this control selected, we'll now go to our user channels tab and we'll choose add user channel. Let's go ahead and give this a name. So at the top we'll simply type in foot roll. Sweet. Next, let's go ahead and check our channel type. You'll notice that by default it's set to float. That's exactly what we want. With float, we work with the decimal value so we can get to an exact pose this way. But notice you have other types that you can choose from. Sweet. Our default value is good. It's set to 0. So when we're ready to reset the foot, we'd simply use this value. Now, let's go ahead and set our minimum value to -1. What this means is that when we reach this value, the heel will be up. And then our maximum value will be +1. So when we reach this value, we'll see our toe roll. We'll also go ahead and lock this range by turning on use minimum and use maximum. Now, if you were to go ahead and click OK, or let's say if you weren't quite set on the options that you chose, you could always go ahead and right click on the custom channel and jump down to edit user channel. From here you could see that you can access most of those properties. You could also remove your limits if you'd like. But what if you wanted to change your channel type? Well, thankfully it's right underneath that option. It's getting cut off in the video, but it is called change user channel type. Thank you, Modo, for having this. Cool. And then if you want to trash your user channel, just go ahead and jump down to the very bottom and choose delete channel. All right, cool stuff. So how are we going to control our locators here? Well, we can work with the channel link system. It's really neat. We can access it a few ways. We can go to the animate menu. Here it is. Or we can grab the custom channel, right click and choose channel links. Sweet. So from there, let's make sure our control object is loaded as the driver. This is what will drive the system, right? To find the custom channel, it's added at the very bottom of this list. So here's foot roll. Now let's go ahead and get started by grabbing the foot locator, the one that we would use to roll the ball of the foot. We then need to figure out the axis that we need to drive, and clearly that's the z-axis. If you ever need to figure that out, you'd want to uncheck world or a local mode, and that's going to show you the exact axis that the object currently has. So we know it's the z-axis, right? Let's go ahead and load it in. We'll go ahead and choose load driven, and we'll search for that z-axis. Now, if you can't quite find it in this list of channels, here's something you can do. You can basically go ahead and retoggle your manipulator, so we can press E until we bring back the manipulator, and that's going to show us our channels here. Sweet. If you wanted to, you could also go to your locator tab, just so you can focus on the value that you'll use. But let me show you another way we can do that. So as of right now, we now need to go ahead and grab the foot roll channel, and then we'll go ahead and grab the rotate Z that we need to tie into it. And then we have a few options. We can create a direct link, which is going to match both values. But in this case, we don't necessarily want to do that, right? Because the rotate Z will eventually have a stopping point. So let's go ahead and use relationship, and then we'll choose add link. Now, you'll notice that we can access our channel information by using the channel links UI here. Sometimes you have to toggle that by turning on channel hull and unchecking that. And there you have it. So this is super cool. Remember, we talked about tracking our values, so you could either do that from the properties viewport, but you'll probably want to do that from here because this is going to show us all of our states, and we could also remove states from here as well. So watch this. We can now go ahead and set our foot roll value to 0.5, and then we can decide on a value we'd like the rotate Z to be at when we reach 0.5. So after we have set our driving channel, let's go ahead and set the driven channel. What I'll do here is put this at about -45. I already have a value that we can work with. But do choose the value that works best for you. I found that this works best for this character's foot. So once we have reached this value, we need to go ahead and save this by clicking right here in the center to save this state. So watch this. Take a look at this slider that we can test. So as we start to scrub now, by left clicking and dragging, when we get to 0.5, we're starting to see our foot roll. How neat is that? If you ever want to delete a state, you'd simply go ahead and click on delete here over to the far left. So you'd first want to go to your state, so in this case 0.5, and then you can go ahead and trash that. But we can go ahead and bring this back easily, -45. And then we'll go ahead and save our state. Awesome stuff, right? It's very intuitive. Now, let's say we go ahead and work on zeroing out the foot so that we can create a toe roll. So I'll go to a value of 1, and then I'll go ahead and set the rotate Z to 0 and save the state. So here's what we end up with. Really neat. All right, so we'll now go ahead and bring our foot roll back to 0. We'll then go ahead and grab the toe pivot locator, and with that selected, we'll load that as the driven. And the driver, well, that's going to be, again, our custom channel. So we'll go ahead and select our leg control and load that. We'll search for the foot roll property. And then we'll go ahead and make sure that we grab the correct rotate Z channel. So again, just toggle your manipulator, and you can select it from there. So that's foot roll to rotate Z. This is going to be set to relationship, and we'll choose add link. Sweet. Now, you'll notice that if we were to go ahead and have a close look at the rotate Z and expand this, you can see we have this relationship node that has been connected to it. So this is another way we can get back to our UI. But sometimes, again, you have to kind of toggle the channel hull. All right, cool. So this has been loaded in, right? Let's go ahead and jump to 0.5. And here's what I'd like to do just to make this feel more organic. I'd like to actually update the toe pivot with a slight value. Let's go ahead and set it to about, say, -10. Not much at all. Let's go ahead and save this state. So watch this. Now as the foot starts to roll up, we get a little bit of a pull, right, from that locator. Now when we get to a value of 1, we need to see our toe roll. So we can go ahead and use 90 degrees here. So once we've brought this to 1, we'll set our value to -90, and that'll bring the toe up. We'll go ahead and save the state. Let's go ahead and test this out. There is our foot roll, looking very nice. Awesome stuff, right? Now, how about the heel? Well, that's going to be done the same way. So we need to now load that in. Let's go ahead and grab the heel. We'll load that as the driven object. Again, toggle your rotate manipulator so you can search for the rotate Z channel you'll need to add. Once you have them highlighted, let's go ahead and choose Add Link. Sweet. Let's go ahead and bring up our UI. We'll then go ahead and set our N value to -1. And then for the rotate Z, let's go ahead and work with about a value of 50. So we're rotating in the opposite direction to bring this up, and we'll save the state. Now we can go ahead and test this out. So take a look. There is our foot roll in action. How exciting is that? And though this might look a little broken, keep in mind that you'll want to repose your leg control. You'll want to kind of move that forward. And now it's starting to look more natural, right? And we don't have to bring it up so high. But we've given animators this limit for a reason so that they can get to an extreme if they absolutely need to. Sweet, so I'll go ahead and zero out the foot roll channel right here from the properties viewport. I'll also go ahead and zero out the leg control. Let's go ahead and jump back to locator. We'll go to reset, not 0, but reset, and we'll choose reset position. And there you have it. So we've managed to rig a foot roll, and we tied it to just one channel to make things very efficient. In the following lesson, I'd like to kind of walk you through the right leg. The steps are essentially the same, but I'm going to show you a few, and I'd just like to show you a few things that you should keep in mind when rigging a chain that has been mirrored. Let's go ahead and get to it. We'll start by adding inverse kinematics. I'll enter into setup mode. Let's go ahead and grab the thigh, the shin, and the ankle. So with all three selected, we're ready to apply our IK solver. Let's click OK and take a look at what happens. You can see how the chain has flipped. So remember, this is due to a few things. One, we have mirrored this chain, and two, it's a part of a space that's a bit different from this bone chain, meaning that the current parent doesn't share the same orientation as this chain. But no worries, this is actually simple to fix. Let's go ahead and undo back to before the chain flipped. Much better. All right, we'll now go ahead and grab the thigh bone, and with that selected, let's jump to our items viewport. We'll press the F key to find it. We'll now go ahead and unparent it in setup mode. So we'll use Shift P to do that. Once it has been removed from the hierarchy of our pelvis bone, we'll now apply inverse kinematics. So we'll select all three bones. With them selected, we'll now choose Apply IK, and take a look. Nothing shifts out of place. All right, cool. Next, we'll take our IK group, so that's the IK root group, and we'll parent it back to the pelvis. So that's selected, we'll shift select the pelvis and press the P key. Fantastic. So now, as you can see, we've brought this back, and when we exit setup mode, all is well. Cool stuff. At this point, if you'd like, you can jump back to setup mode. You can go ahead and grab both IK groups, and you could essentially just go in and zero out your transforms, just to kind of clean things up a bit. From here, what I'd like to do is go ahead and rename the IK goal. So with that selected, we'll give this a new name. That's IK_R, and then leg. All right, cool stuff. We don't have to worry about adding these to their groups just yet, because that's a really simple step. So that's something I'll leave up to you. We can now go ahead and work on setting up our knee control. So remember, we would have to select the IK system, which is underneath the goal. Now with that selected, we can then head over to Create IK Up Vector. All right, neat stuff. Now we can mirror this. A fast way to do that is to create a temporary object that we can then mirror across, and then we can use a drop action to align our knee control to that temp object. Let's go ahead and press the L key to create a locator. We'll make sure our drop action is set to match position, and we'll now drop this on top of our left knee. Next, we can go to our Setup tab and use Mirror X to mirror this across. Sweet. So now it's just a matter of using another drop action to align our right knee control to our temporary locator. Let's go ahead and grab the right knee control. We'll press the F key to search for it, and we'll go ahead and drop that on top of our mirrored locator. Sweet. So when we exit setup mode, take a look, nothing shifts. Jumping back into setup mode, let's say we go ahead and get rid of our locator. Nice. And I'd also like to point this out to you. You can see how the left knee's control object has a bit of rotation, but when we exit setup mode, that's not the case. All this means is that it wasn't entirely set up in setup mode. So to fix this, it's actually super simple. Just go ahead and jump back to setup mode, grab your control. Remember, first we need to reset its rotation so it's oriented to the world, the same way the other controls are, to keep things consistent. And then we'll go ahead and zero the control. And now when we exit setup mode, you can see no longer do we get any shifting. Cool. We can now grab the control on the opposite side, and we can change its display. So remember, we're using box here. Let's turn off solid. We'll set style to replace. We'll then go ahead and figure out a size we should use. So all we need to do is go ahead and grab the opposite locator, or this control object. You can see we're using about 101. We could always set this to 100. So I'll go ahead and link all three channels, and I'll set this to 100 millimeters. All right, cool. So since this is the magic value, we'll go ahead and use that on the opposite control. So again, let's link all three values. We'll set the highlighted channel to 100 mm, and there you have it. We could also recolor it. So we'll head over to 3D items. We'll switch our wireframe type to default, or excuse me, user in this case. And then we'll go ahead and change the color. So on our right side, we'll work with yellow, and all we need to do is go ahead and zero out the blue channel, and we're good to go. Nice. All right, so at this point, here's what I'd like to do. You'll notice that the knee controls, they're actually underneath our center of gravity controls hierarchy. So watch this. When we start to move the center of gravity, let's go ahead and exit setup mode. You'll see that the knees follow. Now, if you want this type of behavior, that's fine, but sometimes you might not want it to do this. Sometimes this might mean you have to counter key the knees in order to get them to look correct. So with that being said, here's what I'd like to do. Let's go ahead and enter into setup mode. We'll take our two knee controls and we will parent to our global control. Once we've managed to do that, let's go ahead and grab both. And then we'll jump to our properties viewport so we can go ahead and zero out our controls. All right, sweet. Let's go ahead and exit setup mode. All right, so take a look at this. You can see how the left control kind of shifts out of place, but no worries. All we have to do is essentially remirror it, and we're good to go. So again, what I'll do is create a temporary locator. We'll use a drop action to align it to the right control. We'll now use mirror X to mirror it across. And then it's just a matter of jumping into setup mode. Let's make sure that this control is brought to the locator. If this happens when in setup mode, exit setup mode, use your drop action. So we're going to drop it on top of the locator. And then, really important, let's just make sure that this control here is zeroed out. So with this and only this selected, we'll now go to 0 and we'll choose all. When we enter into setup mode, we're good to go. When we exit setup mode, we're good to go. All right, fantastic. So again, these are some things that might happen, they might not happen, but if they do, you know how to get around that. You don't have to redo anything. You just have to kind of reposition your controls back to where they belong. You'll see that the knee control is working just fine on both sides. And then when we go in and grab the center of gravity control, as we start to translate that, no longer do the knees follow as they did before. So again, this will help you prevent counter keying in the knees, especially for complex actions. All right, cool. So what I'd like to do next is go ahead and grab the right knee control and get that renamed. That's going to be enum r knee. Cool. Then if you wanted to, you could also rename your IK solvers. So in this case, I might go ahead and add the suffix _r _leg, just so we know that, hey, it's a part of this chain. So we can do the same thing for the left side. With that object selected, I'll go ahead and press the F key to find it. Let's go ahead and expand it. And again, we'll rename our solver here. We'll give it a suffix of L leg. All right, sweet. So when we need to access these nodes again, we know exactly where they belong or what they influence. All right, cool. So I'll go ahead and leave everything else up to you. Those were just a few things to change on the rig to make sure everything works correctly. So in the following lesson, here's what we'll do. We'll basically go ahead and move to the arms, which is our last time to move to our last task, which will be the arms. Now before we move on, I'd like to point out just a few more things. For one, the values that we use for the right foot when setting up the foot roll are just the opposite of what we used on the left foot. So it's really straightforward. Something else to keep in mind too is that we should make sure our objects are stored in their respective groups. Now, when you're ready to add the channels that you would like to lock, let me go ahead and show you a really cool trick that you can use to add them a bit faster. For example, I have the knee controls here, and we need to add rotation and scale because we won't be using any of these properties on these controls. So here's what we can do. We can jump to our channels viewport, and then from there I'll start with rotation. Let's go ahead and press the E key so we can search for our rotate list. And here it is. As we start to scroll down with the middle mouse button, here is where we find those channels. Now keep in mind, so right now, the way it is currently laid out, you can see that we have access to both items. But what if we wanted to add all of our channels simultaneously? Well, what we can do is head over to our options here in the channels viewport and choose show merged. Now that's going to connect all channels together. So all we have to do at this point is highlight 3, and it'll actually go through and highlight all similar channels on whatever we have selected. So at this point we could just go in and search for our channel lock group. Once that has been highlighted, go ahead and search for it again. Go ahead and scroll down. There we go. So again, once it has been highlighted, I'll right click and now choose Add Channels. Sweet. So again, that's going to take care of rotation on both objects. You'll notice that when I go through and grab them both, they both have been added. So we can do the same thing for scale, right? We can grab both, head back over to channels. You'll notice that our option is still set to show merge. So what we have to do at this point is go ahead and grab the scale tool to highlight our channels, right click on our group and choose Add Channels, and we're good to go. Neato. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and move to the clavicles. Again, this is really straightforward. It's nothing we haven't done already. We can get started by creating a control object. So let's go ahead and add a locator. And then from there, we'll make sure to align its position to our clavicle bone. Let's head over to our items viewport. We'll make sure our drop action is set to match position, and we'll add it to that bone object. Sweet. What I'd like to do next is change its display. We can go to display. We can head over to locator shapes. Let's use a custom shape. I'll switch box to, let's say, circle. I like the way it projects. I think it'll be easy to select the way it currently is facing, but we do need to kind of bring down the size just a bit. Wonderful. I'd also like to go to the offset here. Let's go ahead and move this over in the x-axis, and then we'll bring this up in our y-axis. Sweet. So again, we're just making sure it's easy to grab. That looks good. Might go ahead and just bring this down a bit more. And I'd say we're good to go here. If anything, we can go ahead and uncheck solid. Sweet. Let's make sure style is set to replace. And now we can give this a new color. Let's go to 3D items, draw options, and let's make sure we work with blue on this side. So I'll zero out R and G. Nice. We can now rename this object. That's going to be enum underscore L underscore clavicle. Sweet. Now, this is going to get parented to our chest control. So let's do this. We'll enter into setup mode and we'll parent it there. Let's shift select the chest control and press the P key. Once we've done that, we'll go to our properties viewport. And here, we'll just go ahead and zero out our control. So let's make sure we have it selected and only it. We'll go to 0 and choose all. Alright, wonderful. Now once this has been made, we can then go ahead and work on mirroring this across. So we can go to our Setup tab. From there, we'll search for Mirror Hierarchy X. Remember, the difference between Hierarchy X and simply just Mirror X is that Hierarchy X is going to actually clone the object. So let's go ahead and work with that. Cool. Once that has been done, when we select the object, you can see that the pivot point is where it needs to be. Now we just have to use the reciprocal in our offset X channel to move this over. So with it selected, we'll go back to Display, Locator Shapes, and let's go ahead and put in -280 here. There you have it. It has been mirrored. Nice. Okay, so once that has been done, let's go ahead and have a look at our properties. You can see we have to clean out our values. Let's go ahead and use the zeroing tool to do that. When we exit setup mode, you can see all is well. It's always a good idea to check and make sure that nothing shifts when you exit setup mode. So this is working out very well. And now it's just a matter of creating the locators we would use to constrain our bone objects. So let's go ahead and press the L key to create a new locator. From there, we'll switch our drop action to match, and we'll bring this over to the left clavicle. Nice. Let's go ahead and get this renamed. That's going to be LOC DRV underscore L clavicle. And then from there, we'll go ahead and duplicate it. Let's go ahead and take this copy, and we'll add this to the right clavicle. From there, we'll get it renamed. So that's going to be R instead of L, and we'll get rid of this 2 suffix. Alright, nice. So now it's just a matter of parenting our locators. Let's say we go ahead and take the one on the right side, parent to its control. We'll grab the one on the left side, parent. Sweet. Let's set up our constraints. So we'll grab the clavicle bone. From there, let's go ahead and select the locator it should be constrained to. If you need to, go ahead and press the F key just to make sure that you have the correct object selected. As for right now, I have the mesh selected. If that happens, remember, a very easy way to access the locator is to select its parent and press the down arrow to pick walk down in the hierarchy. And now when I press the F key, there is the locator. Sweet. So now it's just a matter of, again, grabbing the bone object, control clicking the locator, and now we can head over to modifiers and apply our rotation constraint. Let's exit setup mode just to make sure all is well. Alright, fantastic. Now when we grab our control, as we start to rotate, there we have it. Everything's working out just fine. Cool. So once that has been done, we can basically take care of the opposite side. Looks like we have to rename this control, so I'll go ahead and do that quickly. And then we'll recolor it as well. We'll head over to Display, 3D Items, and let's go ahead and use yellow. So I'll just go ahead and fill in red and green, and we'll zero out blue. And now, it's basically just a matter of finding our locator. Here it is, underneath the control. We'll grab our bone object. We'll go ahead and control click our locator. We'll apply our rotation constraint. We'll test this out. Everything works just fine. Sweet. How cool is that? Now it's a matter of doing some cleanup work, right? We'll grab both locators. We'll go to our group's viewport. Let's go ahead and grab the hidden group. We'll right-click and choose Add Items. Next, we can go ahead and select our two controls. We'll deselect the hidden group so we can search for the controls group, which is at the very end of this list. We'll right-click and choose Add Items. Now the last step is to add our channels, right, to the channel lock group. So let's head over to Channels. We won't be moving these objects. We will be rotating them, right, but we won't move them, nor will we scale them. So let's go ahead and grab our Move tool so we can highlight all of our position channels. You'll notice that this is still set to show merge. So what we have to do is search for our channel lock group. Let's make sure that gets selected. And we'll now choose Add Channels. Sweet. So scale is left. Let's go ahead and grab our scale manipulator with the R key. Notice our scale channels are highlighted. We can now right-click on our group and choose Add Channels. All right, awesome. So that finishes up our work for the clavicles. That didn't take much time at all. So once we're done here, we can then go ahead and start to work on rigging the arms with